Today we're making a door snake or a draft excluder. Depends where you are as to what it's called. Basically, they keep the heat in or the cold out. So if you've got the heating on at the moment in the cold part of the world, they're a great way to reduce your bills by keeping the house nice and warm. If you're in a hot part of the world and you're lucky enough to have air conditioning, then they're a great way to keep the cool in as well. So not only do they help reduce your heating bills or cooling bills, they also use up lots of scraps and are easy to make. Today we're cutting out the door snake or draft excluder. My table isn't actually wide enough to fit the whole pattern, so I'm just going to show you this bit and then I'll cut out and come back again. So I'm cutting the smaller size, so I've lined up the line for the edge of the smaller size with the selvage or the finished edge of my fabric, which means that the pattern automatically runs parallel to the grain line. So remember, if we don't want our fabric to twist and we want everything to stay nice and flat, we want to try and run things so that the grain line is parallel to the selvage. So I'm going to keep that lined up. I'm going to flatten out my pattern this way and move my fabric across so that I can actually cut it out. So once I've got my fabric moved across and my weight's holding it, I am going to grab my pins and I will actually pin the pattern down and then cut it all out. So sorry I can't show you all of that, but I just don't have the space. And once we come back again, I'll be at the sewing machine showing you how to actually stitch it up. So I know I said we were going to meet back at the machine, but I thought I'd show you how to pin it up first. So this is our actual door snake in the small size cut out. So we're going to fold it lengthwise. I'm using a cotton drill here. It's left over from my garment I've just cut out for my brother. So you can just, might be able to see the right side out is the side you can see all the diagonal lines on. So this is the right side. I'm going to fold it lengthwise. Going to pin along the long side, making sure that my corners match up nicely. Always pin outwards so that you can see them no matter which direction you are stitching on your machine, because we want to take our pins out as we sew and not get in the habit of sewing over our pins. Okay, so we're all pinned up. You can use more pins if you would like, if it helps you feel more secure. It's totally up to you. So now we're going to go and sew. We're going to sew up one side, the short side, and along the long side, and we're going to leave the far short side open. So one side open, close up the rest. I'm at my machine. I've got it threaded up in some navy thread and I have it set to straight stitch. I've also got my needle in the left hand position so that I know from where my needle is to the outside edge of my foot is the 1 centimeter seam allowance that I need. So I'm going to go ahead and put the short side in under and lower my presser foot. And then I'm just going to get started. So I'm going to start, then do some reverse stitches. Locking off by doing some reverse stitches always just makes your seam stronger. So it's good to do your reversing at the beginning and the end. Now I know I'm pretty close to the 1 centimeter mark, so I'm going to get ready to do a corner. If you're not sure about this part, there is no reason you can't go all the way to the end, clip that seam and then start again. But if you want to know how to do a corner, make sure your needle is in the down position. Lift your presser foot, spin your fabric 90 degrees and you'll see my fabric lines up perfectly with the edge of my foot back on the 1 centimeter seam allowance. Don't worry if yours doesn't, that takes a little bit of time. And then I can start again. And all that does is it means we have a very precise corner. as we get to the end here, I'm going to do my reverse again, and I'm going to cut off. And I think my thread has just broken. It has. I've just run out of bobbin thread. Okay, so I am going to cut that off there, and then we're going to go back to the table for the next steps. So we've done the sewing. So one side is still open. I can put my hand in there. We have our long seam done, and then we have our corners. So a quick couple of tips to make turning it out easier. Grab some scissors and we're going to clip our corners. So when we clip our corners, we go 3 mil up from the stitch line and we cut out a triangle, and the same on the other side. This reduces the bulk, and yeah, sure, we're making a door snake. It's not 100%, like you don't need it to be super perfect, but it's a great way to practice clipping, because you'll clip when you do corners on certain kinds of pockets, you'll clip when you do corners on collars. So it's one of those things that's a good thing to know now. So you can clip, and then we can just turn the whole thing inside out. Because this is quite a big circumference, it's actually quite easy to turn it in the right way round. We don't need anything to actually turn it through. Previously, when we've made, say, the scrunchies, we have used safety pin, things like that, but here you can actually do it with your hands. So I've got it pretty close. I've got pretty little hands, so I can probably do this. No, even I can't do it all the way up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to push out the corners as far as I can. Please do not use your scissors to do this. The chances of you poking a hole in it are very, very high. Okay. So we've got it roughly turned in the right way around, and now we're ready to start filling it. So one thing before we start filling it, I've grabbed my trusty Hello Kitty chopsticks. Chopsticks are really great for doing this because they're nice and long, they're very stable, but they're not too sharp. So you can actually poke them into the corners and it makes your corners nice and pointy. So whenever you need a nice precise corner, don't use your scissors, don't use your unpick, chopsticks are where it's at. Okay, so now you can see we've got some nice corners and we've got a rather deflated looking draft excluder. So what we can do is take all of our rubbish and stuff it. So this is a few months of my offcuts. There's offcuts from my overlocker, different projects that I've been working on, and it's all just waste. I try and keep using all of my pieces until they're this kind of size, till there's nothing more. So sure, I could send it to fabric recycling, but I can also just turn it into something useful. So now I'm just going to grab handfuls of it and shove it in my door snake. This is going to take a while, so I'm gonna fill it up and then come back and show you, but basically just keep putting it in, pushing it down. Again, this is where your chopstick comes in nice and handy. Give it a good poke and a nice push down. Start to fill it up. So yeah, you kind of end up with fluff everywhere. But this is how the door snake is starting to look. He's looking a little kind of lumpy. So the trick to get that out is to roll it. It's just like working with pastry, except fluffier. So if you give him a roll and a bit of a massage, ends up much smoother looking, also covered in fluffs. So once you've sort of got it to this level of smoothness, take the end, which is not filled, which is not closed, tuck in the raw edges. And one of the easier ways to do it is to push really hard, get all the bits down, tuck the edges in on both sides, and pop a pin in it. You want to do that all the way across till it's all neatly pinned, and then I'm going to go across the machine and stitch along there. I've got the edge all pinned and I'm ready to sew it. I've had to unpin this one and do this a few times. So what I can tell you is make sure you've got a little gap here. So you can see I've kind of got like a floppy, kind of like maybe 1.5 cm, 2 cm bit. Push all of your filling as far back into your door snake as you possibly can to give yourself a little bit of space here. Line your folded edge up with the middle of your presser foot so that it fits in there. I'm going to lower my needle, pull out my first pin, so I've just forward and reversed, got it started. Because of the bulk here, it wants to push against the foot, which makes the foot resist going forwards. So just try and hold, this hand's trying to hold the weight up and away from the presser foot. Trying to line my edges up, which are sliding a little bit in the weight. That's it. Come to the edge, reverse again. So because I was sewing over bulk, I would always check to make sure I don't have any holes, and just here I can see it's a little bit closer to the edge where it's taken a bit of a slide than I would like it. The rest isn't too bad. It's a little bit messy, but it's kind of livable with. What I am going to do though is I'm going to do another line of stitching on top of this one, but just go past that little section because I don't like how close it is to the edge. I feel like by the time the door snake is on the floor and being kicked about as the doors are being opened and closed, that over time that could open up and I'd have the innards of it everywhere, and you saw how dusty they were. That's not going to be fun to stitch up. Sorry, clean up I mean. That's a bit better. Okay. We'll move across so you can see the finished project. I hope you enjoyed making a door snake today. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and we'll see you again next week for our next beginner's project.